So you have made it to theme. In this video, we are going from the concrete to the abstract, which means we're going to use concrete literary elements like characterization, plot, or conflict in order to determine an abstract quality of the text. For example, theme. Themes are rarely expressed in a text explicitly. You usually have to put together things that you have read and thought about and figured out, drawing conclusions in order to determine the theme. Throughout this video, we will do more than just define theme, but I will show you some ways to use those concrete elements to determine multiple themes within a text. The definition of theme is the lesson or moral of the story or text. Most likely, the theme or themes also reveal the author's purpose. Another important factor about themes is that when you're asked for a theme, your instructor is looking for a complete sentence, not a single word. You might have a thematic topic, which could be a single word, but the actual theme of the text is going to be a complete sentence, something that the author wants to say or prove about that single topic. A final thing to know about theme is that they're often more. We have already reviewed many of the elements of characterization, and some of these elements can help you determine a theme. One way you can determine theme from characterization is using the actual methods of character development. So if you examine how a character acts, their speech, appearance, etc., you can look for repeated actions, repeated speech patterns or words that they might say. Maybe there's a repeated description of their appearance. Any kind of repetition or patterns or traits that are out of the ordinary could clue you into a possible theme. One example would be if a character's actions are repeatedly reckless, then there might be a theme in your story about rebellion. If your character's appearance is out of the ordinary, then you might be dealing with a theme about stereotypes, breaking stereotypes, or fitting in or standing out. Another way you can use characterization to determine theme is by considering the character types. We already reviewed round, flat, static, and dynamic characterization. So if you think about the round characters in your text, especially maybe the protagonist, maybe even also the antagonist, determine which of those characters is also dynamic. That means that they went through a major change in the text. Ask yourself, what was that change? Because chances are, whatever that is that changed about them is cueing you to a theme. Next, we'll review how to determine theme from plot elements. Now, the main plot element that's going to help you determine theme is going to be the climax. Remember that that is the turning point. I'm going to use an example from The Wizard of Oz because I think most people are familiar with this. The climax of this movie is when Glinda the Good Witch comes to the Emerald City. If you can remember, the wizard was going to take Dorothy home, but he flies away in the balloon without her. So Glinda appears and tells Dorothy that she had the power all along to go home. All she had to do was click the heels of the ruby slippers and say, "There's no place like home." So what does Dorothy learn and what changes? What happened throughout this movie leading up to this point? Think about all of the different things that the creator of the movie, the author of the book, is trying to tell you about life. Here are just a few examples of thematic topics from this story. One would be the journey, the whole idea that we need to experience things, meet people, face obstacles and struggles in order to realize who we are. That leads to the next one, identity. Trying to figure out who you are in the world, how do you fit in with others, and what are you best known for. Friendship, Throughout her journey, Dorothy makes friends, and that goes along with acceptance, which is down below, because she has to accept these characters that are all very different from her and not people that she would expect to have conversations with or work with. For example, the Scarecrow, Lion, Tin Man, these are not the typical types of people we deal with. Another issue is self-doubt. The fact that Dorothy, the Tin Man, the Lion, the Scarecrow, they all doubted themselves throughout the movie. And they learned at the end, mostly from the Wizard, that all of those things that they thought they didn't have, they actually did. We have that theme of maturity or coming of age, because Dorothy grows up. If you remember at the beginning of the movie, before the tornado, she's somewhat immature and childish. She's walking on the fence, giving the neighbor a hard time about her dog. But towards the end, she grows up and starts to realize what's most important in her life. And lastly, there's a theme about facing fears. Throughout the story, Dorothy has to confront the Wicked Witch of the West, who is looking for retribution for her sister's death. And Dorothy has to face her fear in order to overcome the witch. Now, I want to note that none of these are exactly themes. They are all thematic topics. Remember, a theme has to be a complete sentence. So we would then ask ourselves the question, what is the author trying to tell me about blank? And fill in that blank with one of your themes. So if I wanted to take identity, I could fill in the blank there. What is the author trying to tell me about identity? What is the author trying to tell me about self-doubt? Your complete answer in a full sentence to this question is going to be your thematic statement. All right, lastly, we're going to determine theme from conflict. I think that this is the easiest way to determine theme because every conflict in the book is going to reveal some sort of lesson that the characters have learned as a result of that conflict. I'm going to use an example from The Wizard of Oz again. If you think about the overarching conflict here, it is that Dorothy's not happy with her home situation. She's living with her aunt and uncles. She doesn't like the neighbor. And if you remember, she actually ran away and went to the psychic before the tornado came. And she sings the song where she says she wishes to go somewhere over the rainbow. However, once she goes somewhere over the rainbow, she arrives in Oz, she now needs to find her way back home. So our main conflict here is Dorothy versus her feelings towards home. So ask yourself, how is this conflict resolved, and what does Dorothy learn as a result? At the end of the movie, when Dorothy's about to go home, she tells Glinda, if I ever go looking for my heart's desire again, I shouldn't look any farther than my own backyard. So this quote is also a clue to the theme and what she's learned, that her home is always with her. It's always with us if we can search within our hearts. Everything that we want and desire, we can find in our home. We don't need to go searching somewhere else for it. So there is our theme. Our thematic topic is home, and then the theme is that home is always with us if we can search within our hearts. Okay? So Dorothy's conflict with home is not the only conflict in the book or the movie. So I'm just going to show you a few other themes that come from other conflicts within this story. Do you remember the lion's conflict was that he didn't think he had courage? And within the book and within the movie, there are a lot of clues based on things that are said. Most of these quotes are said by either Glinda, the Good Witch, or the Wizard. But the Wizard tells the lion that the true courage is in facing danger when you are afraid. And of course, the lion realizes that he does have courage. The Scarecrow, obviously, his conflict is that he thinks he doesn't have a brain. Again, the wizard tells the Scarecrow, why anybody can have a brain. Back where I come from, we have universities, seats of great learning where men go to become great thinkers. And when they come out, they think deep thoughts and with no more brains than you have. So there's a lesson in there about how we are all alike and we need to accept ourselves and not doubt ourselves. The Tin Man wants a heart, and the quote from the movie or the book that goes along with that is that a heart is not judged by how much you love, but how much you are loved by others. And that's a great lesson or a great theme. Two final themes from The Wizard of Oz. The one is, it's not where you go, it's who you meet along the way. That's a great theme from the book. And at the bottom there, you are capable of more than you know. That quote from Glinda applied to many of the characters. So that's an overarching theme because it goes from the beginning to the end and applies to a lot of characters. So one final thing, I'm going to point out the obvious here, but as you can see in these examples, a final way to determine the theme from a text is through the language. Specifically, it will come from advice or some sort of words of wisdom from maybe an older or wiser character in the book. When you come across these parts of a book, it might be a good idea to put a post-it note or highlight that part of the text because chances are it's going to be important and you might want to go back to it at the end.